corporate video games media is not in a very good place right now. We've had Kotaku closing down in some countries, not doing very well, downsizing. Many outlets are going the same way. No one really cares about the mainstream publications anymore. But unfortunately, Polygon still seem to be going strong, and their latest take is that watching a video game is basically playing it. My total playtime doesn't account for the thousands of hours I spend watching games online, says Polygon writer Ashley Barden. So according to this person, you can be cooking dinner, you can be doing whatever, you've got the video game on in the background on YouTube, you're sort of half watching it. That is exactly the same experience as sitting down, learning a new game for yourself, engaging in it, immersing in it, learning the systems, getting through maybe an interactive story when you're making choices and everything. It's all the same. If you're watching it, you're basically playing it. Now, a couple of things here. I don't care about someone watching a Twitch stream, they're watching a Let's Play series, their friends playing a game. All that stuff's totally fine. I've done plenty of that myself. But it's obviously a different experience. If you are watching someone playing, it's probably for a different reason. You have a different motivation for watching. It might be the entertainment value of watching that particular person play. It might even be that you've played the game yourself and you want to see it from another perspective, watch someone experience for the first time. For instance, if I think of Dark Souls, and the article actually uses Dark Souls as an example later, but when I played that for the first time, you just can't beat that initial experience where you have to learn the combat, you have to learn the enemies, how the rules are almost the same for the player as they are for the enemy. You're not some powerful god who can just mash a few buttons, something awesome happens. You actually have to learn what you're doing if you're going to make it through the content of that game. I probably spent like 80 hours on my first playthrough, just trying to get through Dark Souls 1. I struggled, I sucked, as everyone might expect, I died a lot, but I never trade that experience for anything, certainly watching it, because you have to learn that. You can only get that from playing. And even later games, like maybe Elden Ring, still fantastic games, but they don't compare to that first From Software game that you actually experience yourself for the first time. Because once you've learned one of From Software's games, you've kind of learned them all to some extent. There might be still difficult bosses, like in the Elden Ring DLC, that'll take you dozens and dozens of tries, but it's a different kind of learning than just picking up like Dark Souls 1 for the first time and just struggling to even clear one single beginner area. It's so different, and if you just watch it, you're never going to have that for yourself. And I wanted to bring up Dark Souls because I actually have watched some Let's Play of Dark Souls, but the reason I've done that is because I can't get that experience back again for myself. The closest thing I can do is watch someone else struggle for the very first time, and it's an interesting experience. You can sort of see how someone else might approach these different situations. You can get nostalgic about, oh my god, they've gone into the catacombs instead of the undead burg, the easier first area. Maybe they're stuck on a boss for hours because they don't understand the mechanics, how to go about it. Sometimes it is interesting to watch, but again, it's a different experience entirely than playing it for that first time for yourself. And that's really my issue with this article. It's not an article that is saying it's okay to watch a video game, which I wouldn't care about. It's totally fine. Some people will as well watch no commentary video game walkthroughs, and that's all they consume. They don't play a lot of games. That's fine, because I don't think a lot of those people are pretending that it's the same experience as actually playing it. That is what this person is doing. The article is called "Watching a Video Game is Basically Playing It." And it's one of those pseudo-political kind of bad faith articles where it's pretending to be kind of innocent. We're just talking about video games here. But really what it's trying to do, as you'll see, is it's trying to imply if you think differently to this, you're an elitist, you don't believe in accessibility, you're getting on a high horse, you're gatekeeping. All of that sort of crap we've come to expect from these Polygon-like people. So if we go through the article, this person says, I turn off my phone and prepare for another round of Dead by Daylight. The last match was tense. In the game, solo killers need to capture an entire 4-person group of survivors, and this particular survivor team didn't want that to happen. Its members milked every exploit possible, running in strategic circles around the reddish desert map. Their mounting confidence quickly began to outweigh mine, but somehow we pulled through in the end and won. Or I mean the Twitch streamer I was watching pulled through. I don't even believe this. I think the way they've written this is like they were glued to the screen. They couldn't take their eyes off it. I don't believe that. I think most people watching a Twitch stream like this, it's on the second monitor. They're half paying attention while they're doing something else. It is nothing like consuming it for yourself. There's a reason it's its own medium. It's why we've got movies, TV, and we've got video games, which are separate, because it uses a different part of your brain. You might have to think while you solve puzzles for yourself, while you learn those mechanics, while you might make decisions while going through an RPG or something like that. It's not the same as just having it on in the background and sort of half watching while you're doing things. Not the same at all. If you want to do it, it's fine. But again, you've made the claim that it is the same thing as playing it. Watching and playing, it's interchangeable. It's apparently the same. If you don't think so, you're an elitist. Sometimes I find it difficult to distinguish my memories of playing a game from seeing someone else play it. Has anyone else played an RPG before where there's like a really difficult choice? It might be in like Baldur's Gate 3 or Witcher 3. And it's one of those head-scratching, maybe moral choices in the game. Maybe you've got to decide if someone dies. Maybe even if a baby is sacrificed or not, depending on your decision. Is it for the greater good or is it not? And it's one of those decisions where you have to get up out of your chair and you've got to pace around. You start pacing around, sort of go, I don't know what I'm going to do here. It's a really, really tough decision. Eventually, you make your choice and you live with it. That's not the sort of entertainment experience you get from purely watching something. And I've just got this inkling, this feeling that this Polygon writer, they have this opinion because they barely actually consume games themselves. They barely play them. They write articles about them, but we've seen before, most people writing articles for Polygon, they really wish that they could just be writing political articles all day about Donald Trump and why he's evil or something. They don't really want to be writing about games, but they're stuck doing it. That's why they've got these opinions, because they don't want to play anything. They just think, if I've got to consume video games, maybe I'll just watch it on YouTube. I'm not playing it. Why would I bother? Because watching it, yeah, it's the same as playing. I'll tell myself that. And they continue here with, there are a lot of games, Dark Souls, Resident Evil 4, League of Legends, and others, that I talk about with expert conviction, though in reality, they're more like acquaintances. I made it through only 5 bosses in Dark Souls with my pigtailed powerlifter protagonist before I decided that the game's pimple-eyed basilisks were too annoying, and it was time to focus on what was for dinner instead. So reading this brings me back to the original Dark Souls, and from memory, the basilisks could curse you, and you would lose half of your health pool. The only way to resolve that, get all your health back, was to go to an NPC, buy an item, or something like that. It was quite annoying because you had to backtrack through a couple of areas. It sounds like they maybe ran into that frustration. They couldn't be bothered solving it, figuring it out, so they just gave up on the game. They turned it off and they went and had dinner, never went back to it. But then they say, in the years before and after I decided I was quitting Dark Souls, I also watched one boyfriend, roommate, several YouTubers play this game from start to finish. I was so comfortable with Dark Souls that for a summer, I used YouTube speedruns to help me fall asleep. This is just something we see a lot now, and you could kind of call it giving up culture, where if there's anything that's too challenging, any adversity, oh, it's too hard, people just give up, and then they blame the game, or they might even blame gaming in general and say gaming is toxic. They're trying to appeal to these toxic gamers who want everything to be hard. It's not really true. Gaming itself, the fun that comes from gaming, traditionally it did come from some of that challenge. If you go back many years, before we had quest markers, being spoon-fed absolutely everything. It was kind of that challenge that made things fun, and there's nothing gatekeepy about that, because it's very rarely about player skill. It's not like, oh, unless you have amazing reflexes, the reflexes of a 13-year-old, you can't beat this single-player game on normal difficulty. It's rarely ever been about that. It's just about maybe using your brain just a little bit. And occasionally you may get stuck, but that is where the fun comes in, because when you overcome something that's maybe holding you up, that's where you really feel like you're making progress. It's not going to work if the developer is just rolling out the red carpet for you and just making sure nothing can possibly hold you up. And that's purely because they're afraid if you get stuck, you're not going to buy the next entry, number 11, in their tired series. It's almost like you see in movies sometimes where the big boss man of a company, maybe he's playing golf with his team, and those team members, they're really scared. They're like, if we don't let this guy win, we might get fired. It's kind of like that. The developers just almost going so easy on you that you just feel like a dunce, like an idiot. Like you're treated like an idiot in a lot of these modern games. And despite that, we've still got this person claiming that watching video games is the same thing as playing them. And we're seeing some of their motivation here. They're talking about Dark Souls. They're kind of saying it was too hard, therefore I just had to watch it on YouTube, and that's the same as playing it. And that's kind of telling the developers, if you make a hard game, I'm just going to watch it. I'm not going to play it. I'm not going to buy your games anymore. I'm just going to consume them online, watch someone else. That's just going to ruin gaming even more, and that's how I kind of feel about it, because, again, if this person wants to watch a game, who cares? But I don't want to see potentially new gamers, newcomers to the hobby, come into this and think, oh, watching them is the same as playing them. Games must just be like movies. They're going to miss out, because interacting, that is the best thing about games. I'm sick of all these titles that may as well be movies, with your cutscenes every 5 steps. That's where maybe this is justified. If it's basically an interactive movie, that's where, yeah, maybe there is no difference actually watching it. This person, of course, is talking about some of the most interactive games like Dark Souls, so they're not really making that argument that games are too much like movies now anyway. They're just sooking because they died to some basilisks. But that is a thing to watch out for. These game developers, they make games more like movies. That sucks too. I want to move more away from that. I want to make sure that games are more interactive. Those are the ones that should sell, that should be encouraged, because that's where gaming actually feels quite unique, where you get something out of it that you don't get anywhere else. Now, the writer says here, so I discuss games as if I'd played them, because my knowledge of the game matched that of its most dedicated players. I think they would dispute that, people actually playing. I know I'm not the only one who does this. Many of my friends, most of them women, would rather fixedly watch someone else play games than play them themselves. There are many reasons why a person would prefer this. Accessibility options, and this is what I mean. It's actually not about, oh, I just prefer to watch games. It's trying to sort of demean developers and gamers themselves, saying, oh, gatekeeping, they're not accessible enough. What do you want? Gaming is more accessible than just about anything. Even the examples you've given, like Dark Souls, for instance, you can summon people in that game. You could summon a friend and have them basically kill every boss for you. The idea that it's impossible and the developers aren't doing enough, that's bullshit. There's so many solutions. So accessibility options, they're slowly broadening, but they're still lacking. AAA video games now have a standard $70 price tag, placing them along luxuries like skincare and Marc Jacobs keychains. Not everyone can afford the indulgence. Now, I also think that's bullshit, because the $70 price tag, that is expensive for a brand new game. Not everyone wants to play it. But no one is forcing you to have to play that game day one, when it's brand new. I mean, I've used Dark Souls as an example, so has this person. I played that years after release. I picked it up secondhand for like $15 or something like that. Since then, I've moved to PC. Plenty of sales on Steam. We just had the Steam summer sale. Everything was pretty cheap. Anything a few years old from most developers, you're going to be getting it for like $25 or less. The idea that gaming is super expensive, don't really believe it. You just have to be patient. You just have to sort of break out of the release day hype. If you care about playing it day one and, oh my god, I can talk about it online with everyone, then you might have a problem. Then it might be breaking the budget. But if you're just sensible about it, it's not expensive. If a game is like 30 hours, and it's 30 decent hours, not like bloated crap like Assassin's Creed or something, 30 decent hours and you've paid like $20 for it, a few years old game, It's pretty good value. You're not going to get that from like any other entertainment option. Anything else out there, prices are going up. It kind of is a bargain. So this argument as well, like the reason I'm watching video games is so I don't have to spend the money on them. It's weird to hear coming from Polygon, because that's no different than me saying the movies these days, going out to the movies, it's expensive, I'm just going to sail the high seas. It's basically the exact same argument. I'm not going to get on a high horse about piracy, I don't care, but it's weird to see coming from Polygon, because they're usually, we're the moral arbiters, you've got to think like us or you're wrong. Little bit weird. Historically, maligned gamers, including women like me, might also find that viewing someone else's gaming offers a wide open gateway into the subject. Or most simply, it's entertaining to watch someone else perform a task with skill or conviction you might not have. What even is this gateway? Like gaming, if you're playing a single player game, and this person has talked about single player games, it's a very solo experience. You can just go on Steam or your console, buy the game and play it. Who is keeping you out of it? This idea, oh, men are stopping us or whatever. Just download the game and play it. Nothing is stopping you at all. It's a solo activity. Anyone can do it from any walk of life. Disabilities, we've already talked about accessibility options. It's possible for anyone. There is no other activity that is more accessible to get into than gaming. For that to be an excuse for why you're watching it, and if you want to watch it, it's fine, but you said yourself that watching is the same as playing. It isn't. This is some strange coping thing, and I find it strange because it's not like beating a game or even playing it successfully is some sort of achievement. Like beating Dark Souls for myself is like, it's a personally good feeling. I like doing it, and I felt good about it, but I'm not bragging about that or going out, Mum, Dad, I beat Dark Souls. No one can give a toss. It looks totally sad, but for me, personally, internally, I like doing it. That's fine. I'm not sure why someone would have to pretend to themselves why watching it is the same as playing it. You get the exact same satisfaction. No, you don't. You just don't. It's not the same, and you miss out on so much. Even this idea of talking about not gaming but other things, watching someone perform a task or skill, it's the same. If I think about like music, like learning a musical instrument, if I listen to a song, and I personally play guitar, so if I listen to a song with guitar in it, there's a cool guitar solo or something, that's not the same as me sitting down and working that out for myself and actually playing the notes, learning that guitar solo, taking it all in, maybe putting my own expression on it, all these sorts of things. Very different than just listening to it. I'm not going to pretend that if I listen to it, that's the same as me learning it, and then I can just skip all of that. I can skip the hard part. It's this whole thing of just wanting to avoid any sort of challenge, it looks like. Like, challenges are toxic. They're just gatekeeping and all of that. If you don't expose yourself to some sort of adversity, some sort of challenge, have to learn something, you're going to miss out on a lot, and that would really be it. This Polygon ride is probably too far gone. But for anyone else who maybe watches video games sometimes and avoids playing them, I know the feeling of trying to play a brand new game for the first time. That's the hardest thing for me, is starting up a brand new game and learning it, because you're probably going to have to look at the interface, figure out what's going on. Sometimes it doesn't feel great, and you do feel like just switching it off and going back to some comfort food, maybe replaying something you've already played. But I always find that if you just overcome that initial maybe 20, 30 minutes and you get into it and learn it, suddenly you've got something new that you're loving in a lot of cases. And you are glad that you pushed through and you stuck with it, because now you've got something else to great play, more great memories to actually make. And the article, again, was titled "Watching a Video Game is Basically Playing It," but all the arguments in the article are basically about games are too hard and other crap like that. They're not really making the argument that watching is the same as playing. They're just giving excuses for why it's difficult to play a video game. So it's a pretty disingenuous article that seems to exist just for people to make fun of. That seems to be all Polygon does these days. If we look at what some people are saying on other gaming sites, gross, Dr. Evil says, how about no, it basically isn't. Reading a play-by-play synopsis of a movie, scene by scene, is the same as watching it, apparently. Getting your lunch stolen is the same as eating it. Reading a book is the same as getting to read it. I feel the same way about the Olympic Games. Yeah, 100%. Now, the truth is, this article really just seems like a games journalist going mask off. This is what they all think. They don't consume games. They don't care about them. This is kind of evidence of that. We're seeing that firsthand. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.